Hi everyone, it's Kelly here and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, welcome back if you've been before. Lovely to have you either way. On this channel we talk books and today I am presenting to you a very late December wrap-up. I intended to film this wrap-up closer to the end of 2022, but I was going away from the 1st of January, so just didn't quite get there, unfortunately. But here I am today. It's halfway through January when I'm filming this. By the time you see this, it'll be late January. That's okay. It's my wrap up for December. All right, so I read 7 books, sorry, in December, and only a couple of them were physical books. So I've actually only got a couple of physical books to show you today. The first book that I read in December was Little Women. Well, I finished it. I think I'd started it. No, wait, I did. I started it then. So Beth, I cried and I cried. Like I genuinely cried actual tears. So I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I think the only thing that sort of brought it down was the excessive amount of preaching in the book. It's of its time, so I can't really fault it for being too preachy in that sense, but it's not, that sort of thing is not for me. But it was otherwise a delightful read. I discovered while reading that the US editions include Little Women and Little Wives, which is sold separately in the UK. So some of the edition, I have multiple editions of Little Women. Some that I own only have what is part 1 in this one, because separately, the part 2 is published separately in the UK, as far as I can tell from the internet. Anyway, so this, I've read both. So I read parts 1 and 2 in a US edition. So yeah, in this edition they're presented as volumes 1 and 2. So it was lovely. This is a beautiful edition that I own. It's the Penguin Threads edition, and it's designed to be like a sort of what would you call it, embroidery. And then on the back of the cover is sort of what it would look like on the other side, which I think is really cool. I've just realized I look really sweaty because I am a little bit sweaty. I had to turn the fan off so it wouldn't bother you. It's really hot today in Australia. Okay, anyway, Little Women, I did enjoy it. 4 stars from me. The next book that I read was on my e-reader, and it was Spellmaker by Charlie N. Holmberg. Again, I gave this 4 stars. It is the second book in a duology. The first one is called Spellbreaker, which I read, I want to say in 2021, and it's just taken me ages to get to the second one. I kind of wish I had read them a little closer together because I wouldn't have had to do so much remembering of what had happened in the first one that affected what happened in this one. So level of spice was mild but delicious, and I think it was a very satisfying conclusion to the Spellbreaker duology. The main character is called Elsie, and she's a good protagonist, I think, and she has a love interest called Bacchus Kelsey, who is delightful. He's tall, dark, and handsome. And in my notes, I've written, would their ship name be Baxi or Ellis? I think Baxi. So, obviously, was thinking about their little romance as part of this duology, which I did quite enjoy. As I said, the spice level is quite mild, but it was sort of, the tension simmered for a long time. After that, I read another ebook, which was Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrun. This was a Christmas romance, a sapphic romance, and it was enjoyable. It was cheesy from time to time, And the plot was broadly unbelievable, to be honest, but I did get drawn in. There was a lot of queer rep that only sometimes felt forced. Most of the time it felt genuine. So this was enjoyable, and the spice level was a lot higher in this one than it was in Spellmaker. And it was quite steamy. This is... for those who don't know this book, it is a... so basically the plot is we've got two timelines. We've got sort of this Christmas and last Christmas. So last Christmas, our main character had met a woman in a bookstore, and they'd sort of had this like really fast but deep connection. They'd, ended up having a night together, and then we don't find out why until sort of midway through the book, but she ends up leaving in the morning and they lose contact completely. So then we have in the current timeline, so that happened last Christmas. In this Christmas, we've got her... She sort of ends up getting into this kind of arrangement that isn't a romance, but is an arrangement with a man, where she agrees to become his fiance, his actual fiance. So they get engaged, but it's because his grandfather has left him money that is contingent on him getting married. So it's sort of like a solution for them both, because, she's having some issues with like rent and, just sort of general living, her job and so on. She's not happy. So she's like, I can do this, it's for money and I can do this. But anyway, she ends up going with him sort of as part of this to stay with his family in their like rich people cabin in the snow kind of situation, which is kind of like mansion in the snow. And it turns out that his sister is the woman that she had the thing with last Christmas. So then it's sort of like how that all plays out and resolves. It was enjoyable. So yeah, if you're looking for a steamy Christmas read, would recommend. I don't know if I said already, but I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read a non-steamy Christmas read, which was A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. This is now my husband's and my new Christmas tradition. We started it in the previous Christmas. We listened to, it's an abridged version, but it is read by Sir Patrick Stewart. And this was our second time around, and I think we both were like, let's definitely make this a thing. Like every year we're going to listen to this. It's a couple of hours long, so we just, on Christmas Eve, we just kind of listen, and as we're sort of doing our other things, we might be wrapping presents, or we might be just tidying up, or whatever we're doing, we just have it on to play as we're just kind of going about our Christmas Eve business. And it's amazing. It was a 5-star first time around, 5 stars again second time around. Patrick Stewart is amazing narrating this book, and I would highly recommend. I listened to this on Scribd. I have a subscription to Scribd and I mainly use it just for audiobooks. And yeah, it's on there. So look for it if you're also on Scribd. Then I read another Christmas book, because I really this year wanted to read more, because I own several Christmassy books. So Little Women being one, because you begin sort of at Christmas time in Little Women, so I kind of count it in my head as a Christmas book. I wanted to read more Christmas books this year, because I always get to the end of December and I'm like, now I can't read these books that I've got on my shelves. I can't read them again until next year, because it's, why would you read a Christmas book when it's not Christmas? So anyway, the other Christmas book that I read this year was A Christmas Party by Georgette Heyer. So Georgette Heyer is an author that I got into in 2021. I read her book, The Black Moth, back then, which I really enjoyed. So I've subsequently collected a couple of her books because I enjoy her writing. So this one was obviously set at a Christmas party, but it's a murder mystery. It's sort of like a locked room murder mystery, like nobody can work out what happened. So it actually takes a little while for the murder to actually happen. I think it was like chapter 5 or 6, somewhere, you know, so it was a decent way into the book. But so basically the premise of this book is we've got an elderly man who's a bit of a miser. He doesn't really like talking to people or being with people. He has a brother who is much more kind of like vivacious, but he and his wife are kind of mooching off this older brother who's the one who has all the money, and they're just they've been living with him for like 2 years. The brother that's living with the older brother decides to throw a Christmas party where they invite family members and sort of like friends of the family to the house. This is not really a plan that the older brother is on board with, but he kind of goes along with it. And then, so you kind of in those first chapters get to know all of the people who are staying at the kind of mansion for the party. And then when the murder happens, then they all sort of become suspects. And, you know, you're trying to work out who did it. I found this quite enjoyable as a book to read. And yeah, so I've written a jolly good murder mystery with plenty of banter. The banter was actually probably the best bit about it. And that's sort of one of the things I really like about Georgette Heyer, is that the banter between her characters is always on point. I love it. And I thought the ending was pretty decent as well, like the way that things resolved and the person who did it. Yeah, it was fun. I liked it. I liked it a lot. So yeah, would recommend that one. I ended up giving that one a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I finished off the final book in my reading the long list of the 2022 Miles Franklin Literary Award. This was the last one I hadn't yet read. It's The Performance by Claire Thomas. So I'd been sort of putting this one off a little bit. I don't know why. I don't know why I was putting it off, but I was. It took me ages to get to it, but that's okay. It was interesting, but it was not compelling, I would say. So I ended up giving it 3.5 stars out of 5. It took me more than a month to read this book because I just didn't feel like picking it up. There was also some stuff in here about the climate that was a little bit heavy-handed, I thought. But I did enjoy deep diving with the 3 women who narrate this story. So the premise is there are 3 women and they all go to a play. There are connections between them, but they're not there together. So they've all gone to this play. The play is called Happy Days. You never find this out. I actually had to look it up. It's a Samuel Beckett play called Happy Days, and they talk about this play quite a lot. I'm not familiar with the play. I don't think that necessarily it doesn't make it inaccessible because they do kind of just talk through the play. However, I think if I had known the play, I would probably have connected more with this book and maybe found it more compelling, possibly. So if you are familiar with that play, if you've seen it before or if you've read it before, then perhaps this book would be a good one for you. So basically you're sort of inside the heads of these 3 women as they're kind of thinking through like their life circumstances and some things that they're kind of anxious about. So one of the women is a sort of older woman who's had a long career in academia. She's works at a university, and she is she's at sort of the end of her career. She does have a son, but she sort of feels like the ship has sailed a little bit in terms of her feeling connected. So she didn't have that sort of like stereotypical maternal instinct, I guess you could say, when her son was born, and she kind of retreated back into her academic career. So she's now dealing with a husband who is beginning to have, I think it's a dementia of some description, where he's hurting her, like as in physically, hitting and so on. And so she's kind of like dealing with that as being somebody who really doesn't like talking about what's going on for her personally, and sort of likes the appearance that she's got everything together. Then we also have a young woman who works as an usher at the theatre, who is sort of sitting in on the play because, obviously she doesn't have usherly duties to do while the play is kind of playing. She does the work in between. And she has... so also the backdrop of this book is that there's a bushfire, like big bushfires that occasionally happen here in Australia. I think in other countries you don't always call them bushfires, forest fires, like, big kind of natural fire events, but like out of control. And her girlfriend is in an area where there's bushfire, so she's like really anxious about her safety and whereabouts. And she's kind of like working through that. And then we have another woman who's sort of this, like, in her, I would say, early 40s. She's like a philanthropist. So she's being courted by the theatre to have some money, for her to give some money to the theatre for projects and so on. And she's kind of working through some stuff as well. So it was interesting, like, sort of getting to know these characters, but like, as I say, it wasn't compelling. I didn't feel like I necessarily wanted to keep picking this book up, so I did have to kind of push myself through it, but I did enjoy it once I got through that part of it. All right, so then just to cap off the year, right before I think I finished this one on New Year's Eve, I decided to pick up a book that I had purchased digitally that I've heard lots and lots of reviews of that are like sort of very covert, like, you have to read this book, because essentially it's alien smut. So it's Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon. And like, it does what it says on the tin. It is definitely alien smut. Let me see. Okay. It was compelling and enjoyable enough. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars out of 5. It kind of the pace moves along. I will say content warning for rape and sexual assault. Also, the basis of the kind of main relationship that occurs in this book is a sexual assault. A sexual assault happens that's kind of like a, miscommunication, I would say, because you've got an alien and a human that don't speak the same language, and a cultural kind of difference. That's how it's played off, but it's still a sexual assault. And that kind of forms, like, it's a sexual assault, and she's just kind of like, oh, actually, I'm kind of enjoying this, which I have questions and I have problems with that concept. So anyway, be aware that that is in there. If you can kind of get past that bit of it, after that occurs, it's interesting. It's an interesting kind of development of things. But yeah, there were problems. So I don't think it's quite as great as some of the reviews that I have seen of this book, but it was okay. And it was an alien smutty end to the year. So what more can you ask for? All right, so that is it. I don't actually have that many physical books to hold up to show you, because most of the books I read were either audiobooks or ebooks, but yeah, I had a pretty decent reading month, lots of 4 and 4-star books, which were really enjoyable to read. I finished off all of the sort of like little dregs of the goals that I had aside. I'd already reached my number of books goal well before, so I was just sort of finishing off challenges and projects that I had been working on, and I was able to get those done, so I was really pleased. So have you read any of these? Did you have different opinions to me? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Feel free to like and subscribe if you have enjoyed this content and would like to hear more. I regularly do reviews, monthly wrap-ups, I do book hauls, I do all sorts of bookish content, so if that sounds up your alley, would love to have you on the channel. All right, I will see you on the next one, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.